So I guess I can start seeing the reason what brought me to San Bernardino were my parents. I'm born and raised here. So 58 years ago, right up the street, I was born, and what was unique about it is the fact that I was the first child born to my parents. So I think that was, I consider that unique.
I was born actually in the community hospital of San Bernardino, so I've lived here my entire life. What made it unique for me is that I grew up on a ranch, and so I would always be in like the backyard tending with the chickens and being up in like the avocado trees, and that's just how I grew up. And so I think what made it unique specifically was the amount of land that you can have here, because you know, you drive somewhere else and it's like these tiny little apartments and you don't even have a tree that you can look at. Yeah. So I'm really grateful that I just grew up around the cows, the chickens, all of the fruits and vegetables that my grandparents tended to when they came to the States.
Awesome. That's cool.
Yeah, born and raised here too. My parents actually came here from South Central Los Angeles. And so, you know, I'm the firstborn too. And so I think what makes it special was it was the first place that I felt like I belonged and I understood. I was understood. Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah, that's cool. I'm actually a transplant. I was born in LA County. I was born in East LA, actually. And my parents moved out here in 2002, you know, because after, you know, kind of bouncing back from job to job, they were finally able to get like a stable living, secure a stable income, and they decided to move out here. And, you know, I lived in Rialto for a couple of years. Unfortunately, my parents lost their home in the recession. And, you know, we relocated to San Bernardino, and I'm actually glad. It's sort of like a blessing in disguise, I think, because I lived in San Bernardino and because I was going to school at Valley College, I was able to, you know, link up with some awesome folks and really just, you know, like you said, right, like find myself and really feel like I really belong somewhere. And so, yeah, that's kind of what brought me here. Yeah.
It's interesting. I mean, you have to have your DNA here for people to understand. And since you came here when you did, it's still just, there's a DNA, and it's interesting whenever we start seeing people from other places and they're like, oh, you just don't understand, so.
Yeah, I mean, I know I lived like the first years of my life in you know, LA County, Pomona, La Puente, but in a lot of ways, this is home. You know, I always tell people that San Bernardino and the Inland Empire for me is home, and it's really where I want to be, right, for the rest of my life, because there's a lot of great people here. So
yeah, and I feel like those places, like kind of like our brothers and our sisters, like Pomona, LA, East LA, like they struggle with the same problems that we do. So I feel like we're able to like understand each other on that level. Even just like the people who are from that community, like black and brown, like we just like know how to like party and like, you know? So it's pretty cool.
Yeah, so my name's Anthony Victoria, and I am a communications organizer for the People's Collective for Environmental Justice. Also a longtime journalist, covered community issues for the Inland Empire Community News, and really just someone that likes storytelling and that really uses, you know, whether it's photography or writing or, you know, videography to tell the stories of our communities. So.
Yeah. Well, I'm Sofia. I'm a videographer and filmmaker here from San Bernardino, and I also am a digital producer for a company in Riverside. And yeah, same like you, like my passion is storytelling and using film to tell stories and change perspectives, because I feel like there's a lot of power in that. So.
Yeah, likewise. My name's Yulissa Mendoza. I'm a photographer, and mainly like through my photography, it's fashion portrait photography. And so I do try to change the narrative of what is normally seen in photos and try to include more queer folks, more BIPOC folks in just different body sizes and things you wouldn't normally see. I'm also a botanical line artist. And so through that is where my storytelling comes through more. So I feel like I call it like my little ethnographic sort of thing because I graduated with a degree in anthropology. And so that's the way that comes out is I ask people, what is your favorite flower and why? Because through there, you get to see people's stories, or I hear where they came from, or like there's always more to just that one flower. And then I'm also the art director of San Bernardino for the Arts Connection, which I'm super excited about because that community here is just amazing. I'm excited to do stuff in San Bernardino itself because I've been doing things in Redlands for a while now. So I'm excited to create art here and make some change. And I'm also part of the Art Lens in Redlands. And so there I curate events and yeah.
Awesome. That's cool. And my name's Lynn Brown Summers. And so I'm retired, thank goodness, from healthcare. But in that particular time, that spanned, I am an organizer. I'm an activist still, even though I've retired professionally from healthcare. I do media, but I'm also the president over the Black Voice Foundation. So storytelling and media has been in my lifeline for, well over 50 years. So I continue to do that. I do a lot of farming, and so when it comes down to taking pictures, one of my, and I'm so glad that we've met because you're gonna help me, I pray, a collaboration. I started taking pictures of a lot of the Black farmers that are here, and there's not too many left. And I have Black and Hispanic community gardeners. And they're all in their 80s and 90s. So I'm trying to capture their stories before they pass on because that knowledge, one of the things that I've seen is once they pass on, that knowledge is gone. And I learned that in corporate America, when somebody retires, if you haven't tapped into that, then what ends up happening is that you're gonna constantly have to figure out how did that person make it so smooth? How did they make that work? And so I'm seeing that when it comes down to the farming in the community gardens. So I'm trying to capture their stories. I would love to do a calendar of some sort. So that is one of those projects that I've been just capturing pictures and talking to them over the last 2 years. So wear multiple hats like all of you and love storytelling. So yeah.
I think for me, San Bernardino is representative of passion and heart. I think folks always look at this region as like downtrodden, but for me, I think it's the opposite, and it's because of the people. Because the people that live here, they may be struggling, but I think they make up for it with the passion and the heart, with the commitment to their communities, and so. You see that through the arts. You see that through this center here, the Garcia Center for the Arts, and you see it. I mean, even in our communities, right? I mean, with Latinos. I go to Muscoy, and it's unique how I see all these street vendors, and they've created their own culture. And I think, it's unique to me. So I think I would just say heart and passion is what really is what San Bernardino is about for me.
Along the same lines, I would describe us as like resilient people. despite everything that's happened, we're always just waking up the next day and fighting for what's better, what's best for our family. And I think we're just really creative because, a lot of creativity is just being creative at problem solving. So we have a lot of issues. And so I see like these people trying to fix or like solve those issues in the most creative ways through art, through being an activist. And it's really inspiring to me in how they do that. So just creativity and resilience.
Yeah, I totally agree with both of y'all. Like, especially in Musquoy, with all of the street vendors coming out and taking that space of like, now people have that space to just go and have food on like a Friday night if they want to. Like, before we'd have to figure out which houses had it. And now we're creating those spaces. And I think that translates to like more of San Bernardino, is that people are starting to take up their space and more space and claim it. And I just absolutely love that, because you could see it through like the arts specifically, because I'm heavily involved in the arts, and like everyone there is just so caring. And I have this conversation over and over again whenever I see people, and I'm just like, we are like at a prime where everyone just cheers one another on. We all want to be involved with one another and see how we can like collaborate or just like lift one another up. And we all want to attend one another's events. And we're going to attend and we're going to support. We're not going to bring one another down. And it doesn't matter if there's two of like the same thing, like it's okay. Like it's not a competition. And I think I really appreciate that support that everyone is collectively joining in on. Yeah, I love it.
And I guess I look at San Bernardino eclectic. And it goes back what each one of you guys are saying. But being here as long as I have and watching stuff change, but still staying the same, just different players. And we're sitting here and we start looking at just San Bernardino as a whole, and people ask me, I'm like, San Bernardino is the largest county in the United States. And that's my first intro. And then I'm like, but you have to see all the things that are going on, and we live in pockets, but all of the pockets come together. And just like you said, somebody might be up in Highland, and we hear about something, and then we take off and we go down to down to the Orange Show. So unless you live in a bubble, you don't know what's going on. And I feel bad for people that drive into LA because that's where their work is. They miss everything else that we do here. So I think that when people say they don't like it or it's whatever, it's because they don't put their self into what this community is all about.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think, go.
Okay. I think they're just settled in their ways. I feel a lot of people have just given up, and I think that's kind of lazy. I think instead of giving up, we should dive deeper, and it will give us a lot of answers, and we'll find a lot of beautiful things. Like, San Bernardino's, there is crime and there is poverty, but I think there's beauty in, the struggle, and there's beautiful people behind that.
Yeah, for me, when I went to UC Irvine, and so I lived in Irvine for 4 years, and I was like, I'm never coming back to San Bernardino because I'm going to get stuck. I don't want to come back. And that was my thing. And then I came back, and I was like, I started going to coffee shops. I started meeting everyone. And it's that actively doing things and going out of your comfort zone to meet people. Like, as soon as you meet one person, then it just starts to like blossom from there. And now I'm just like, I love it, and I want to be here, and I want to like help it grow, and I want to see it grow because it is growing. Because before, I feel like before I would say downtown, but I never meant San Bernardino. And now I can say downtown and people will know that I'm talking about San Bernardino, and like there's 5 different events going on at downtown in one day, you know? So it's thriving. I love it.
Yeah, and I think it's also the years and years of work that have gone towards making this community what it is.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of, you know, folks who have raised families here for generations, right? Like your family, Lynn, right? And I think, you know, it's also a testament to that work, right? The work that our, you know, our predecessors have done. And I think what we've done is like just kind of continue that on, right? And create a culture that is unique to us as people living in San Bernardino, people living in the Inland Empire. And I mean, for me, I never complain. I mean, I used to as a kid because I'd kind of see, you know, San Bernardino empty. But then I realized, you know what, it's not about the coffee shops, it's not about all these places, it's the people, it's the community themselves that make this what it is, you know? And I think the culture is so rich here, and I just hope that people that are from LA or from other parts of California or the US even, you know, see this, because I mean, it's rich with culture, it's rich with art, and I think it's rich with heart and passion for sure.
Yeah, definitely. I remember one time, it's just a short story, and I promise. That's one of my biggest things. I tell stories to get a point across. So please forgive me. But I worked on an organizing campaign in Kansas City, Missouri. And so every other weekend I would come home. And so I'm sitting in the airport and I ran into this guy because he's coming into Ontario. And I'm sitting there and I'm looking at him like, do you know where you're going? And I'm thinking maybe he should be going to LA or something. I didn't know what was going on. And he was like, I'm going to the IE. And I'm sitting there, I was like, what? And I said, have you ever been to the IE? And he was like, no, but I read about it. And I mean, he was so excited. And I'm sitting there and I'm like, okay. I said, well, you know what? This is what you can do, because, you know, I'm still proud of it, but it was so funny because this guy is just like excited about the IE and this. And so I saw him, I want to say maybe a year later, because it was an 18-month stint that I was there. And he was like, I told you I was going to love it. It's better than here. I've been there during the summer. During the summertime, it was hot, but it wasn't muggy hot. And I've been there during the wintertime, and it's not, you know, and he was sitting there like, it's no snow. And he just started telling me all the things that sometimes we miss living here.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So yeah, I thought that was like one of those stories that I was so amazed that somebody was so excited and he had never been here.
Hey, it's hot, but you know, the mountains is not too far. It's just like a 30-minute drive. You could get, you know, a nice little breeze at the lake or something like that. That's what I always tell folks, you know.
Like perfectly in the middle. If you want to go to mountains, 30 minutes. Beach, an hour.
Yeah.
So we're in a good spot. Like for our city, we're really in a good spot. We have like very good access to all these places. But I relate to you a lot, like going to college and like, oh, I don't want to go back. I think, especially I saw that in high school when everyone was going, like planning their college stuff, like, oh, I want to get out, you know, like I don't want to be stuck here. And then I went to college and I realized, wow, I feel like so lonely here and not understood. And the people, like the culture was like a culture clash. So I came back and I was like way more thankful. And I think it takes that outside perspective to make you more grateful for like the place that raised you and the place that gave you like the values that you have.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
First of all, I will say that I do not like the way that everybody else from the outside represents us. I don't like the fact that they say that we have in January, all of a sudden crime rates, you know, the highest and all this other stuff. And so I think that's why I like the media and like the fact that my parents bought this newspaper from the students at UCR because their story wasn't being told. So I think what we have to do is tell our story because I don't like the narrative that somebody from the outside says. So, because there's so much more positive than there is negative. So, it's we have to tell our own story. We have to take the narrative back.
Yeah, I agree. I think, you know, the facts are facts, right? And the facts show that our communities are struggling, but it's not representative of the entire narrative, right? And I think it's frustrating sometimes to read about, and I'm just throwing this example out because this is like what I work on, but around, you know, air pollution and environmental racism, you know, the facts are the facts. And oftentimes, you know, some of the corporate newspapers will gloss over the issue and they'll praise the industry without necessarily addressing the impacts. And I think what community newspapers catch, papers like the Black Voice News, like Inland Empire Community News, and so many others, is those stories in between, right? And the stories of the advocates that are pushing for, you know, for better progress on clean air, better progress for community. And, you know, I wholeheartedly agree. We need to tell our own stories. And I think all of us here do that, right, in our own way. And that's really what drove me to like journalism and storytelling, was the fact that I was reading the paper every morning and not seeing things around San Bernardino, or like, you know, I mean, even seeing things, you know, from like the Black or like the brown perspective, you know. And I think that's changed, right, over time, but I feel that there's a lot more to do. And I think that's why so many people in this community are taking it upon themselves to tell these stories, you know, because they're not being told. And, you know, for me, it's refreshing to see that, refreshing to see different stories, different storytellers, because, you know, media shouldn't be conglomerated, right? There shouldn't be like one company or several companies trying to tell you what to be informed about. It should be, you know, diverse. It should be wide range. You should have multiple options. And I think we're beginning to do that here. So, yeah.
Yeah, I completely agree in the fact that we need to tell our own stories, because I most recently saw there's going to be like some music festival here, and the music festival in their programming, they usually have the city itself on the programming, and then when they like came out with the flyer for this one, they just put Southern California.
Yeah.
Like, so they're literally erasing us from the narrative when we're the ones hosting all of these people. But like, just like how you said with like the farmers and them dying out and not knowing their stories and not being able to tell their stories, it's about us reclaiming our narrative and getting those stories out, so that way people can hear them from us and the narrative doesn't, like, we claim it. And I especially like that people are coming out with like films based on like the photographers here, or based on like the education system here. And so like it's firsthand experiences, and then you get to kind of like talk with these people afterwards, because it's such a like tight-knit community that you can figure out your way to these people, and then you can ask them even more questions about it, and then you get informed by there. And so that's why I see the social media and I see all of like the flyers and the publications, but I'm just like, okay, but how can I talk to you in person so that way I can like see what's actually going on.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think when it comes to representation, like true representation, it has to be in the hands of the people that are being represented. And so I see that now, like people are stepping up. And it's been happening slowly, and I think I see it now because of like social media and like how much that's helped us. I actually did a study in college comparing like the news media versus film, and it was surrounding kind of what was happening in the 90s with LA and the riots. And I found that the news media used very interesting like verbiage that was like had racist undertones of like violent Black man, violent Latino does this. And I do see that with how people cover like things happening in San Bernardino. It's very like racist undertones of how they frame that narrative. And they only show one side of it. It's never like the full holistic view of what's happening. And so what I see with these creatives, with filmmakers and like photographers, they're showing their perspective of how it is to be raised in this community. And they're not being fake of saying like, it was beautiful and it was a little hard, but it's raw and it's honest. And it's coming from a good place of like, look where I came from. Look at like the beauty, like maybe like an image of like a paletero walking in the streets, and there's candles like on the side of like the concrete, and so there's a difference in between what the news media is saying and what us people are saying.
And we should never. One thing that the older I get, the less I want to apologize or sugarcoat anything.
Yeah.
So we should never apologize for the things that go on in the streets. I was born and raised on the west side of San Bernardino, and some people say, "Oh my God, I could never live there." I'm like, "What the heck are you talking about? I know the Jacksons, I know the Johnsons. What are you talking about?" You know, I remember whenever I used to walk home from school, and if I got in trouble, I would get whooped by the Jacksons, the Cunninghams, and such before I got home.
On the way home, take another way around.
But it was the community helped raise who we are.
Yeah.
And I don't ever want us to apologize for what happens here. The only thing that I ask is that we represent who we are. And you have to have ownership to it.
Yeah.
And as long as we do that, I think other people then will sit there and say, dang, we can't say this about them. Wow, we can't do this because we're going to call them out each time.
Yeah, and I think, I don't know how y'all feel about this, but I think within the last decade, there's been really this push for like reclaiming the narrative and reclaiming space. I know that was brought up earlier. And the reason why I say that is because the bankruptcy, I think, brought on a lot of negative press, a lot of negative stories around San Bernardino and the issues surrounding it. And we can't allow for a couple of bad apples to sour the entire community, right? Because we're talking about a 200,000 plus, where 200,000 plus people live, and I think, I've seen just a lot of folks just respond to that, respond to the negativity, respond to the issues with, the realism, right, around the hardships, but also around, the desires and the aspirations for a better community, right? And I think, for my time living here and working here, I think my work has really revolved around responding to the leadership and the lack of leadership. And I think there's a lot of people in this community that, want to really take this city and just make it grow and make it a little bit stable, right? But I think also it's sort of paying homage to the people that have been here before, right? Who have done the work, who have provided so much, and just, also just reviving it, right? Because, all these stories, all these narratives, I think all tie back to one thing, in my opinion, and that's just having pride, having ownership in your community. And I think, when I do a story, I'm not just thinking about myself. I'm thinking about obviously the audience, but also thinking about what people want to see, what people want to know. And I think that's important. It's just recognizing that that there's just like a renaissance, I guess, right, for lack of a better way to put it.
Exactly.
So where can people go to find the information about what's going on in San Bernardino? I will tell you, other than our newspaper and Gloria's and all the other community papers, the best place is the barbershops and the beauty shops. Hands down. I will tell you, whenever I needed to know something that wasn't even in the newspaper, because, all the community newspapers are weekly, and they have a deadline, and so something might start jumping off on Thursday. All of a sudden it's planned, and if you're sitting in the beauty shop, and I had sons, so I was always at the barber shop with them, and I would hear something, and I'm like, well, I didn't know about that. What's going on? And so then I could hurry up and change things and rearrange stuff and then take off and go. So I think if you're not with the community newspaper, even to today, if you're in the beauty shop or in the barber shops, you're gonna get all the information, stuff that you don't want to know, but everything that you need to know.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to echo that and say that, barbershops for sure, but also like, your local markets, like I know like in our community, Latino Mexican communities, we have like carnicerias, we have little markets, and just I hear a lot of chatter and just people that know each other. One person will know each other, and it's a little community. And I think people pass information and pass invitations to parties and stuff like that. So that's super unique. So I really resonate with that. Also, social media. I think I always tell people, when you're posting online and when you're putting something online, you're engaging in an act of journalism. And here's why, right? Because as long as you're receiving and delivering a message, you're invoking journalism, right? So, you may not think people are peeping your stories or whatever, or peeping like your feed on your Facebook or on your Instagram, but it's powerful, and I think that's how I've been able to sort of kind of share news that maybe might not be necessarily in a paper or in a, or with my byline. So
yeah, I think social media has been like a really good tool for me. I mean, I'm on it all the time, that's why. But I think I started off first finding out about these things because I got connected to SB Food Fest, and I DM'd them. I started working close with them, and then the algorithm suggests things, and so I started following like all these like local pages, like Revive San Bernardino, I think it was like We Are the Change San Bernardino, SB Food Fest, and I think everybody's like super interconnected, and they're willing to support. How like we're very supportive like other people's events, and so I'm always seeing even like the Garcia Center. They're always posting like art programs are coming. Giveaways for children, maybe like this weekend there was a Michelada Fest downtown, art exhibitions. So I think, just getting connected and like doing your research of finding those pages, because they're really helpful. If not, you get entertainment and you also get like a good education sometimes. I mean, I've gotten to like learn about a lot of things about San Bernardino through these events. So
definitely.
I'm going to start off with social media as well. I'm going to name drop all of my friends right now because they deserve all of the credit. Creative Grounds, they are in downtown San Bernardino, and it's a studio, and they repost all of everything that's going on in that alleyway. And they are the people who are just like, just do what you want. You could do it. Cheer you on, and then also like the Garcia Center. The Garcia Center reposts all of like the events that are going on. And even if you just message them like, here, can you repost this? They will. And then Viva La Boba is very active in what they do. And if you have something, you could go put it on their little poster board in the actual store, or you can go online and they'll share it for you. But I also think, again, it's the people. It's the people where you're not going to know unless you know. And so you have to make that like active, conscious decision to seek that information out. And so, like, once you start meeting all of these new people, like, I just met y'all today, and now I know that I can, like, look at these 2 different newspapers in one day. That's how quickly I figured this out. And so now I have more sources, and it's just about meeting different people and talking to them, and through there you'll figure out all of the events and also just what's going on and how people are.
And I think one thing that, and I'm glad, I mean, just sitting here talking and it's like been so cool. Love you guys' energy and some of your resources and the fact that you know my niece and all this other stuff. Um, what I'm starting to see is how my parents raised us. You never just stick with with not so much your kind. I shouldn't say it that way, but
What
you
you're
have to
comfortable
you have
with.
to be but you have to explore
Mhm.
and you have to be willing to go to Redlands. You have to be willing to go outside of your neighborhood.
Mhm.
And sometimes people aren't, and sometimes people can't. So
Yeah.
I don't want
Mhm.
want anybody to, but if you just take that opportunity to sit there and say, you know what, I can go across town. I can go over here and meet somebody new and do something different. And I think social media has done that where it exposes us and we're open to more things and we see more things. But I just think that, and this is just for anybody, that's not just for San Bernardino, don't limit yourself because then that's whenever you live in this box and you can never get outside of that box. And
Yeah.
then you just don't see anything else and you don't see the beauty of what's going on around you.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because, and this is sort of going back to the last question, but like I think sometimes when it comes to media, it's quicker to just make a phone call and get like a quote or get like just do an interview. But I find it more enriching and it just strengthens stories when you're out and about exploring, right? You're walking, the west side of San Bernardino to scope out different scenes. You're in Redlands to scope out different scenes. And I think that's how you also enrich the stories because you're actually walking the communities and you're going up to the people and you're making that connection, right? And so I think um, it's about the people. It's about connecting with the people first and foremost, and um, I just love listening to people. I could talk for days and I could listen to people for days because it's about those connections, right? And I think when you take the time to listen to folks, I think you find that you have more similarities than you do differences,
Yeah.
So,
I do think, like, I feel like social media could be that window, and once you step through, you get to know the people, and that's just like opens up a whole new world. Like, that's how it was for me. I saw social media, saw an event, I went to the event, and I started talking to all these people, and I started to get to know them, and they're like, "Oh, have you gone to this? Oh, do you know this organization?" I'm like, "No, I don't." And then
Here we
and so
go.
like it just opens like a whole like world of events and things outside the city, inside the city. So I think people really just have to get involved, in the community, and it'll open up like so many avenues of like possibilities.
absolutely.
I think when it comes to what I want to see for the future of San Bernardino, I would just say growth. I think now that we've come together as a community, we see how strong we are. And, there's a lot of things coming up soon with like the whole redevelopment of downtown. And I think, if we step up and we let our voices be heard, we won't be like gentrified. And I think a lot of people here, they have businesses, and I think they need to step up and like own it up because like we need them. We want to see like these local businesses and we want to support you. And so I think in the future I do see like a renaissance, like you said, of business owners, of artists stepping up and like sharing their talents with the community.
Yeah, I agree. I want to see more people owning their spaces and owning the buildings that they're in because I know that we're growing. And so I'm just like, please, everyone buy all of the buildings that you can now because we're growing. So I want you to stay here and I want you to thrive. But also, like, just more events so that way people can get to know one another, hear the news that's going on. And arts, I'm just like, I want art plastered everywhere. And I want more, like, galleries or outings that we could have. So, like, it's not just events where it's like a food event. It's an event for, like, there's different sorts of events for different types of people. So that way, each person that lives here can enjoy themselves in whichever way they choose. And they don't always have to stick to, well, we only have food events here, so I'm gonna stay home. Like, I just want to see an expansion of the type of events and the type of spaces that we hold. And yeah, arts. I'm just like, arts.
Yeah, I think for me, I want to see similar. I think art is it, and I think art's from just a wide range of folks. I also want to see less warehouses because, you know, I know these are bringing jobs, but they're not bringing the best kind of jobs. You know, and I think if we want a better community, if we want a better quality of life, we need better jobs. And it's not to say that, you know, these warehouses should be destroyed, but I think we need to move away from that mindset that it's just warehouses, it's just logistics, right? There's more to this community. There's more to just a warehouse job. And it's not to knock those people because this is dignified work, don't get me wrong, but there's so much space and we shouldn't be filling the space with just warehouses, you know? We need more galleries. We need more community centers. We need more community gardens. And I think we could do that. But I think it starts with the kind of vision that we have. And, you know, it seems like everybody at this table has a vision of a future that kind of moves away from the status quo and goes more into what we want to see as a community. So.
And to piggyback on all of it, that's where we have to become active with our politicians because in the long run, they're doing stuff behind our backs. We don't even realize the things that they're doing. So if we want to show that we're activists, that we like the arts, that we love gardening, that we love all the things that we love here, we have to then turn around and tell our politicians, we vote for you. We can vote you out until we find somebody, and one of you guys may run. Somebody may run for something because otherwise your voice gets lost.
Absolutely.
And we have to be able to speak for the people that have to work 3 jobs because in those warehouses, they're working 2 or 3 jobs. If they work 12-hour shifts and they work 4 12-hour shifts, if they have kids, if they all these things that are going on, they can't talk. They can't speak for themselves because they're just trying to keep their heads above water, trying to survive and make sure that their kids and their families are taken care of. In one of my little stories, I remember I lived near the train tracks over in Rialto and hate hearing the horns at 4 o'clock in the morning. But because of the policies and all the things that are in place, federal as well as state, I went to my local elected officials and I said, we have to do something. I said, I've been places where there's quiet zones. And because I spoke up, people were, and I started talking to the neighbors. They were like, we'll elect you to whatever you want because you know what the problem is. So I know I kind of went off of what we were talking about or the question, but it still kind of falls back into it. How do you want us to be viewed in San Bernardino or how it should look? That we become active and realize that if we all have the time, like I said, I'm retired. We have to speak for the people that can't.
Yeah.
We have to be able, I'm a firm believer. I go out and I do a lot of education on voting And I tell people, if your family member is in jail, then make sure that you're able to vote for them, educate yourselves. So that's how I see us being able to have the strength and the power back in this area. It goes back to changing the narrative, is telling our story, taking it back, is we tell people how we think that things should be run. If you look at some of the streets or some of the buildings down here just on East Street, okay, again, older than you guys, and if you go across the street from the police department, that used to be a Bell. So it was operating, so it had nothing but phone operators. And it's owned by somebody that doesn't live in this country.
Right.
Mm.
Right.
So we have stuff that we should be able to say, you know what, they're not here, they're not doing anything, we need to take it back.
Yeah, and I think, what drives like the desire for change, like you're saying, Lynn, is these narratives, right? Telling the stories and really telling the stories of why people want change in San Bernardino and why people are actively pushing for change now or have been for years now, right? And I think, you know, we have to really take initiative, like in the sense that if we want that change, we have to act upon it, whether it's running for office, whether it's becoming a community leader, whether it's being an artist with political commentary, right? All these different things, right, that you could do to really make a difference. And I feel that, San Bernardino has always had that. And I think it's just in this current generation, in this current age, it looks like this. It looks like more arts, more arts. It looks like more murals. And it's beautiful, And I think we just have to make sure that as the future moves forward, that we do what we can also to protect our community, right? And to make sure that, these developers or these people from the outside recognize that this is our community, right? And that we're reclaiming it. So
Yeah, and I really like how, even in this table, we have this like joining of like artists and activists, which I really like because, artists love telling stories. And I think I've seen that with your documentary about, environmental racism. You did that, right? You kind of
I
little
do a lot.
videos, right? Yeah. So, but I really like how you use like film to tell these stories of like highlighting these problems, because like most people, like that's just every day and like it gets hidden in like their busyness. And so, using film to highlight these things, but also using activism because we have to fight and make our voices heard, and keeping people in government accountable, and also promoting policies that make people want to live here and start business here, and better the education system here. So I really think like coming together is going to help us.
Yeah, and to go off of that, I've just recently had this conversation with Jordan, your niece, and how you're saying film and showing that to people who normally wouldn't have the time to go through all of these thesis papers that have these writings that not even I can comprehend, and they're just so stale. And I'm like, okay, but like, what's this gonna do? Like, you just wrote this paper, and who's it really gonna go to, and who is it gonna help? And like, how do we get that information to like the broader general people who normally wouldn't be in those spaces? They normally wouldn't have the time to even sit down and like spend like 20 hours reading like something so big. And so like that's where like the artists come in and share those stories, and we help make that accessible to others. Yeah.
And it's so cool that you said that, because Jordan's dad, my brother, he's now collecting all these laws, because like my mom raised us and she would say certain things, and we used to think that it was kind of racist, because it was like, you have to be 200% better than everybody else. And we're sitting there like, 200% better, 200% better. What the heck is 200% better? And what does she mean? Well, there's a law on the books in New York that someone Black had to be 200% better than their white counterpart. So then you sit there and you're just like, oh, that's what that means. And you don't realize that there's all these crazy laws on the books, and it shows why we need to start telling the story, start educating ourselves. So we, like us sitting here, I love doing research. Looks like you love doing research, but we could sit there and compile the research after I sat there and read through it and said, oh, here, you want to do, you want to sit here and do a play on all of this stuff that goes on here or what happened, so that people, it not only is it written, but it's also visual, and somebody might paint a mural, and it's still getting told, because I worked for 35 years. That 35 years, I worked a lot. And that's why even though I did a lot of stuff in the community, I couldn't do a lot in the community. Because if I had to do overtime, and I know we were talking about this earlier, we're asking people to do certain things, but if they work 2 jobs, if they work 12-hour shifts, if they work 10-hour shifts, you're tired, you're dog tired. And you're not able to participate. So it's just like one of those things that if it was a short story, somebody would be able to capture what we needed to make sure that that happened. And if it was a mural, as I'm driving past, I'm sitting there like, oh, what? And you see the whole storyline. I saw that when I was in Cuba. Oh, I love Cuba. And if you guys get a chance, go. Because they had the whole storyline of the revolution and all the things that happened. And you captured it all on one street corner. So that's just my little 2 cents.
It's beautiful.
So again, Lynn Summers, and I am president with Black Voice Foundation, but I'm also owner-operator of Summers Prep. So just make sure that you go on. I teach everybody how to garden, teach you how to preserve, things that our ancestors did a long time ago, and forge. So it's like a cool thing.
And I'm Yulissa Mendoza. My Instagram is yu.lis.sa, and then that's for my photography. My art one is Lavender Art. It's LAVENDXRT. And then I'm also part of the Arts Connection. Stay tuned with all of the projects that I'm doing there. That's where all of the art for San Bernardino specifically is going to come through, which I'm so excited about. But yeah.
Yeah, well, I'm Sofia, and you guys can follow me. Right now, I only have Instagram, so at Sofia the Warrior is where you can follow me. And where you can find me, anywhere there's an event. I'm just always trying to cover stuff and like show the beauty, so yeah.
Yeah, and I'm Anthony Victoria. I have my own publication called The Frontline Observer. You could follow that on Twitter and Instagram, The Frontline Observer, or go online, frontline-observer.com. Also, a community organizer with the People's Collective for Environmental Justice. You could follow them at PC for EJ. And you can follow my own handle at Eye of the Barrio. And I'm on Twitter and Instagram. So
Cool.
And thank you
Thank you for joining us. This is Just SB.